Is, oh, it's recording. Cynthia?
Okay, I can go ahead and start. Okay. Well, everyone, good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Brown-LaVeist. I'm the director of Morgan Online at Morgan State University, and it's been my honor to be the president of Maryland Online. I want to welcome you to our Maryland Online Leadership Institute this afternoon, Women in Leadership webinar. This month, we celebrate Women's History Month to reflect on the contributions of women in our society. I would also like each of you to reflect on and celebrate your own contributions to our society. Today we have two wonderful speakers. Our moderator for today is Dionne Thorne. She's an instructional teaching specialist at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dionne.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Cynthia. I am delighted to be here today to serve as your moderator for this wonderful panel discussion. And at this time, I would like to ask each of the panelists, Tamara Greenfield-King and Shadia Abras, to take a minute to introduce themselves before we get into our Q&A. And if you have questions during the webinar, you can post them in the chat or unmute, and we'll take your questions as posted. Thank you. Tamara?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamara Greenfield-King. I currently serve as the Senior Associate Vice Provost at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been in that role for about 2 years, and in my direct line of responsibilities are our Naval ROTC program, our Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life, Office of Student Activities, the Career Center, in addition to the Platt Student Performing Arts Department, along with a host of other administrative responsibilities for the Division of University Life. Prior to that, I was at Washington University in St. Louis for approximately 20 years before I transitioned over to Penn. And prior to that, I was a practicing attorney for about 11 years.
Mom.
I transitioned into higher education, and I'm happy to be here, and it's going to be a good conversation. Thank you.
Hi, Shadia. Before you introduce yourself, if you're not speaking, could you please mute? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shadia Abras. I am currently the Director of Institutional Assessment in the Provost Office at Johns Hopkins University. I've been in this role for about 2 years now, and this is a new role. So I am the inaugural director. It hasn't existed before. In my job today, I am responsible for creating a culture of assessment across all 11 divisions and 9 schools at Hopkins, including Carey and medicine, nursing. What we're doing is we're implementing a new assessment system, but creating an assessment process where learning becomes a lifelong learning for the individuals and for the students, including curricular, co-curricular activities, and any activities they have done that they can present to either employers or to go on to other schools, graduate schools. Before that, I was Associate Dean at the School of Education at Hopkins as well. In that capacity, I was in charge of online learning, assessment, and technology. And we had created a very mature process for online programs, including a doctoral program in education. Before that, I was director of distance education at the school as well at Hopkins. And this, when I met Dionne, I was director of distance education at Goucher College. And this is where I was in charge of all the graduate programs and creating a new distance education. In my previous life, I was faculty. I still am. Throughout all these jobs, I'm still faculty. And I was a faculty at Goucher in modern languages. I used to teach French literature. So that's it. I'm excited about being here and this conversation.
Thank you. Again, I am so delighted to have the opportunity to talk with two of my friends. And what Tamara did not say, as Chadia mentioned, how I know her, Tamara and I have been friends, lifelong friends. So we go way, 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 I won't keep saying how far back we go, because I might say, you might get an idea of how old we actually are, but we grew up together. So with that in mind, thank you again. So my first question to the panelists, on your path to your current leadership role, what particular challenges, if any, did you encounter that you think or believe could be attributed to being a woman? Tamara?
So I have a complex response to that, because while I think things happened to me because I was a woman, because I have multiple identities and not what one would deem a traditional higher ed background coming from another career path, I think things, I did not have such a stretch the way others would have. So because I went to NYU School of Law, I did not have my credentials in higher ed ever questioned. So I recognized the privilege that I had when I walked into the room, having been an attorney for 11 years and graduating from one of the top law schools in the country. So the first thing is, if you're a woman, we all understand that you have to be over credentialed for the job that you initially get hired for. And that was true in my position. And when I transitioned out of the practice of law and walked onto campus, I'm very well aware, and I tell people this story, I took a 50% pay cut to transition to higher ed. I was moving to another part of the country, from the East Coast to the Midwest. And then at the same time, I was extremely overqualified for the initial job that I landed. I needed to get my foot on campus. I needed to be able to prove myself. So when I started out at the university, I started out as the Director of Student Conduct and Community Standards, and worked in that role for a number of years, and then eventually began to grow up the ladder by way of responsibilities. In terms of being a woman, I would say some of the challenges are, and we have to walk a really fine balance between being heard and understood and not playing into some of the negative stereotypes that women in professional careers sometimes fall into that trap of. So I think, and I say this not in a negative way, but I say to young women professionals, or women who or people who identify as female, you have to look the part. You have to show up to be taken seriously, whether we agree or disagree with it. We have to look a certain part. We have to look like we are ready and prepared to take on the leadership and responsibilities that people are probably vetting us for down the line. The other thing, and we'll get into this a little later for me, is women have to be networkers, and we have to network outside of just women. So I'll leave it at that and let Chadia answer.
I full-heartedly agree with everything you said, Tamara, but unlike your experience, mine has always been in higher ed. I graduated, and that's where I started my career, is in higher ed. And honestly, because I was in areas which is languages and education and linguistics, these areas in higher ed are predominantly women. So you do not encounter the problems or issues that others may encounter in different departments, like, let's say, in departments where men are more prevalent there. So I cannot say that I had any challenges, but believe it or not, self-confidence is very important. for you to succeed in your leadership role. So the challenges could be overcome by being self-confident, play the part, but also be authentic. Be authentic of who you are and ethical. Do not change your leadership style only because others are saying you should to emulate someone else.
Thank you. And I just have a quick follow-up to that. I appreciate your thoughts and sentiments about being authentic and being confident. But my question is, how do you balance being confident as a woman without being perceived in a negative perspective from your colleagues?
How do we raise our hand? Where's the hand? May I say something?
Yes, go.
Yes.
Because it kind of combines what is it Tamara or Tamara?
Tamara.
Tamara, I'm sorry. What both were saying, because when I started my dissertation, I did it on perceptions. And what I found out was about the perceptions of women in leadership positions. And what I found out were that males perceived women in leadership positions on attractiveness. And so when the statement of dressing the part came out, it kind of spoke to that, because it was perceived by men that women in leadership positions who were deemed on their level of attractiveness were less competent than those that they perceived as less attractive. So when is Shadia? Chadia, I'm tearing up everyone's names. When she stated that it's about, being more confident and playing to your abilities, that to me speaks more volumes, because, if we worry about, what everyone else is perceiving us to be and presenting ourselves to others, then we're not going to be able to put more of our effort into ourselves, into our abilities, and doing our job, because they're going to perceive us on however they want to perceive us. And so we have to put our thoughts and our efforts into our abilities and build ourselves up, because again, they're going to perceive us on whatever. So it's about us and our confidence in ourselves and our abilities, and just doing our jobs and knowing that we can do our jobs.
Thank you.
Can
So,
I?
you want to respond?
Yeah, and I should say this. I have been the chair of an association, a national president. I have also chaired our National Training Institute for Student Conduct Professionals across the country. Probably developed the curriculum, wrote the curriculum, worked with professionals to present that curriculum. Easily to 2,000 professionals in my 30 years of doing higher ed. And I'll never forget, there was 200 participants in the room, and the male participants, not the male presenters, the faculty, literally because it was in the summer, had the ability to get up in front of that room in unironed shorts and a crumbled up t-shirt. Not one, but 3 or 4. There is no way a woman would be taken seriously if that is how they showed up to present. And I say that not because I think it's fair, or not that I think it's the way it should be, but that unfortunately is our reality. And when I look at my skin color and being a woman of color, being a Black woman, I also recognize that I do not have the luxury of showing up the way some of my male counterparts show up if I'm expected to be taken seriously. So I applaud you for the comments. And I do think it is a balance between being your authentic self and also not derailing your opportunities at the same time. It's a tight walk that we sometimes have to walk. I sit in meetings sometimes and I write down what I want to say, but I know if I say that, it's not going to go over well. So then I process it with someone else who may have been in the meeting with me at a later date. So yes, we do have to show up in a particular manner. So thank you for that comment.
So Tamara, I was following up in terms of both, you were talking about looking the part and Shadia said being confident. And to your point about the example you provided, how do you balance confidence with perception? And I'm speaking specifically to you, as Tamara, as you just alluded to, you don't want to come off as the angry Black woman. Sometimes people have that perception, but you want to be confident. How do you balance that?
When you are a content expert at the table, I never say to people, you should minimize your voice. And in a chapter that I wrote in a book recently, we talked about genuine, authentic, inclusive leadership and collaboration at the collegiate level. And I talk about experiences of working. Why on a college campus do we bring 7 people together to have a meeting, and then we allow one person to monopolize all of the time, all of the thoughts, all the conversation? So if we're bringing our authentic self to the table, we are better. It's not even a question of what I'm saying is true or not. We are better when we allow all 7 voices to be heard at the table, when we're trying to make a decision and come to what is the best resolution. That is what we need to do. So when we talk about bringing our authentic selves, I don't view everything the way Shadia views everything. I don't view everything the way Dionne views things. But collectively, the 3 of us probably will come up with a better outcome than just one of us. So I say that to say, Dionne, when you're really trying to be in a leadership role, the inclusivity is second nature to me. I don't ever shy away at a conference table when we are talking about content that I am an absolute expert in. I'm not going to minimize my expertise. And that's where people have to feel comfortable saying, I am the content expert. I had an experience the other week with a group of 15 colleagues, and I said, this is what we need to think about. But at the same time, I gave my opinion. It was an expert opinion. As I like to say, I wrote the chapter in the book. I'm telling you all, this is what we need to do. I was completely dismissed. 4 days later, it comes back around. Tamara's absolutely right. We have to reverse this decision. Here's the change. I did not back down and say, okay, do whatever you all want. I just said, here's my expertise. I've done this. Here's where we are. That's what we have to offer.
Shadia, do you have a follow-up or anything you'd like to add to that?
Oh, just briefly, that being authentic and representing yourself in a good way are not mutually exclusive. And I do believe, Tamara, your colleagues who showed up in shorts, shame on them. They are not representing themselves. And honestly, as a woman leader, I would not have taken them seriously either. So what goes around comes around. The perception is the same from both sides. And we have to stop being like, admitting that everything is okay on one side while we have to behave in one way just to make it legitimate. That should stop at this point.
Thank you. So I noticed a comment, Tamara. Carolyn asked in the chat, when you have a moment, could you give us the title of the book? If you want, you could type it in the chat if you like, when you have a second. My next question, did you have the support and advice of a mentor during your career? And if so, what was the best advice they gave you? Shadia, you want to start?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Yes, I had several mentors throughout my career, and the really poignant one that I received from one of my colleagues and a friend She said to me, Shadia, you're authentic. You don't sell yourself. Just keep being yourself and don't ever lose confidence because others said something or displayed abilities that you or were not welcoming. As long as you believe in what you're doing, as Tamara said earlier, if you're the content expert, you need to be recognized as the content expert and have confidence in yourself that you are that expert.
Tamara, do you want to speak about the mentor, and if so, what was the best advice they gave you?
So I, by my very nature, am a people person. I surround myself by people. I thrive with my engagements with people. I am what you would call an extreme extrovert. I recognize that's not everyone's position, but I believe that having mentors, and I don't mean they only have to be women, they only have to identify, in my case, as African American, that you need to have a wealth of networking and mentorship from different people, quite frankly, at different levels. So although you're not going to potentially have mentorship from, I'll just use this as an example, your administrative assistant, okay? You have to have a positive, healthy relationship and respect for that person, because on a daily basis, you're still, that person and you are still part of a team. If that person doesn't show up correctly, that's a reflection of you. So I don't want anyone to ever think that you can only be mentored by people who are higher or lower in the station of your career path. The one thing that I will say is, if you are going to take on a mentor and you're going to say to someone, I want you to mentor me, you have to be open to accepting honest, constructive feedback. There's no need to have a mentor if you're not going to listen to their authentic feedback. And I often say to people, don't ask me what I think of you if you don't want the true answer, because it doesn't benefit you if you're a mentee of mine and I'm not giving you constructive feedback, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Have I gotten constructive feedback from one of my VPs years ago? Absolutely. She gave me some feedback that really hurt, but it was the best thing she could have ever done for me, because I've carried that along all these years and it has served me well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Since we're talking about, you alluded to in your example, hiring administrative assistant. When you are hiring for a new position, what are the core competencies that you look for in a candidate? Either one of you could start. I was trying to go back and forth.
I'm not good at multitasking. So I'm going to screenshot the book and I'm going to email it or text it to you, Dionne, so you can put it in the chat. I can't do both. I'm sorry. So I'll do that while someone else is talking. But what I'm looking for, and here's what I say, I'm in the middle of a search right now for a position, and we're down to the finalist. Everyone in that finalist pool can do the job. They have the requisite skill set to do the job. What I'm looking for is fit. Are they going to fit into the team? Are they going to be an asset to the group dynamic? How are they going to show up? Because if in your finalist pool, let's face it, if you've done a good search, your finalists all can do the job. Now it gets down to the nuances of, can I work with this person every day? What do they bring to the table that others in the pool don't bring to the table? So I kind of look for fit. Again, that goes along with my personality of being that people person throughout, and that's important to me and for the team dynamics. I also give a lot of agency when I do searches on college campuses. a lot of agency to our students, especially if it's a student-facing position. I try to include students early and often in the recruitment as well, because their perspective matters. I don't want to admit this, but I am getting a little older and I'm a little further away from the college student experience, even though I have a college student living in my house right now.
Chadia, would you like to respond to that question? What core competencies do you look for in a candidate?
Like you said earlier, by the time you search for somebody, they can do the job. If they cannot do the job, they're not even a candidate. So what I look for in the final pool is exactly that. Do they understand the culture of the organization? Are they able to adjust to that culture? Are they good collaborative workers? Can they work with others? Do they take constructive criticism? Are they able to take feedback? And honestly, somebody who is quick-witted, able to answer the questions very quickly, but also who's not constantly touting what they do and telling you, this is my credential. I've seen your credentials there in your CV. Now tell me how you are going to communicate with others.
Thank you. My next question, have you ever competed for the same job with a man, and what was the reason that you were hired over the other candidate? Yeah.
Well, I can be very quick there. No, I haven't. So, and if I did, I wasn't aware who the other candidates were.
Okay, thank you.
I have competed with male candidates as well. I don't know that I was hired over someone based strictly on gender. I do believe it was based on credentials, quite frankly. And I also think that once you get hired, networking and navigating how to be successful in that job is also important. And a lot of times we focus on just getting hired, but then most of us want to move up in our responsibilities and our careers, and really having some strategic, how do I navigate that, becomes really important.
So what did you learn about how to actually, once you, as you said, got the job, what did you learn to help you progress through the various ranks in higher ed?
Sometimes taking on responsibilities or tasks that may not even be in your portfolio, may not even be in your direct line of responsibility, but there's a need for someone to do it, to also get out of your comfort zone and your particular department. So a campus is huge. Make sure that you are meeting people all over campus in different pieces of the organization, because you never know when they're going to say, well, we're looking for this type of candidate. And someone will say, I have someone for you. They're over in X department, but they would be really good for you over here. Displaying your skill set, being professional. Now, Chadia and I are making it sound like it's easy, right? So this isn't easy. The other thing is, you have to have 1 or 2 or 3 confidants on campus. Because when someone really makes you upset, and it's going to happen, you need to be able to, in a protective mode, confide in someone else who can give you guidance, feedback. My friends will say, I'm trying to talk you off the ledge, Tamara. Don't do anything that's going to derail your career. And I shut the door and I have that heart-to-heart phone conversation, or I'll call someone up when we were in person and say, can we grab a cup of coffee? I just need to process this with you. So again, you have to have a couple of people that you can trust to really be vulnerable and say, this just happened. Help me understand how to navigate it, because that is going to happen. I haven't been in higher ed for 30 years without people making me unhappy. I'll put it that way.
Would you like to add anything, Chadia?
Absolutely. I agree with Tamara. We shouldn't make it easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. And you feel like you're putting 150% effort in what others are putting probably less than 100. Yes. And making yourself available and doing the job makes you stand out. But like Tamara, I always go to my mentors. I have 2 or 3 I go to regularly to just check myself. Just being reflective about things that happened that could have upset me or not. Am I being reasonable in this situation? And what is your recommendation? And sometimes you hear the answer you want to hear, and sometimes you don't. You just have to take the feedback and go with it.
So Shadia, you mentioned you sometimes go talk with your mentor. How did you find or identify folks to serve as your mentors?
Usually they're colleagues. So they're not in my leadership hierarchy. And their colleagues, we're at equal footing. They are at different stages in their careers, and they don't have to be in my space in the same group that I'm in. But it's people that I've known for a long time. They are in positions that are similar to mine, and they know me. They know me well, and I take feedback from them, and they give feedback honestly. And usually I didn't seek them out, but we grew to get close together and mentor each other. But you have to look for people like that. You cannot survive in an organization without having mentors or somebody that you can go to be your safe space.
Sorry, Tamara, did you want to add any other comments to that? Okay, thank you. Can you share an example where multiple leadership perspectives of gender influence the outcome better than a single perspective?
So again, I'm referencing the book because it's fresh. It just came out less than a year ago. And Dionne, I sent it over to you, so you should have it to be able to put in the chat. But I talk about that leadership. It's diverse, inclusive, authentic, collaborative leadership. And I talk about, and I use this as an example often, if we're at a table, let's assume we're all in person and the virus is gone forever, never to return, and we are in person, and we are having a conversation, and we're trying to solve a problem. We're trying to come up with a solution to a problem. I will intentionally make sure that everyone around the table has a voice with intentionality. So I will actually, and part of this is my legal training, and I taught at WashU Law School for 15 years before I moved out here. I will use the Socratic method in some regards and say, Dionne, tell us what your perspective is. Because if you don't do that, the people who are the extroverts, which I am one, will monopolize the conversation. That's not to say the introverts don't have anything to bring to the conversation. They're just not going to be as vocal. So if you are in that leadership role, being intentional about including all the voices at the table. In Zoom land, where we are in, it's easy to say, okay, we're going to let everyone give their perspective initially, and then we'll have a conversation or a discussion, because to not invite everyone to the table does not allow you to have the best outcome. And that's just something I've learned years ago. And I also say in the chapter, don't let people's titles dictate who you listen to, right? So when you're trying to figure out a process in your office, and for me, when I was at Washington University, an admin, I was like, how does this impact you? Give us your perspective of what we should be thinking about and what we should be looking at, because oftentimes the leader may not be the person doing the physical job. It may be someone else. So I am a really, really strong proponent of inclusive, genuine, and authentic leadership. And I will also say this: don't ask someone for their opinion and then dismiss it. Why are you asking if you're not going to give it the credence and credibility that it deserves? You might not go that direction, but I also like to say to professionals, you got to hear everyone. You can't just close your ears to what others at the table have to say. So I like to not work hierarchical in solving problems, but really bringing to the table the people that are going to help us achieve the best outcome. But that also requires vulnerability. So that's another piece that in my team, even here at Penn, I tell people all the time, let me know if you all disagree. Let me know if I'm not seeing this the way that you're seeing it, because I never walk into a room and assume I'm the smartest person at the table. I believe collectively we are the smartest team at the table.
Thank you. Chadia, would you like to follow up?
Just to add that I agree. There is more power in the collective brain thinking of the team, and a smart leader usually surrounds herself with with a lot of people who have the ability to bring everything to fruition. And not listening to them is a shame, because they're there to really help the organization achieve what it has achieved. But I also add that leadership styles could vary depending on the organizational needs at the time and what the situation is. For example, I'm more of a transformational leader. I'm visionary. I look for the future and for the creative outcomes of things, but that doesn't always work all the time. In some cases, when you have a crisis or you have something to address, you have to be more transactional and managerial in your style, where you have to have an outcome that is laid out and you are working towards that outcome. And the team you surround yourself with will always help you if you listen to them.
Thank you. What is the most influential professional development opportunity that you've completed to date? And how did that opportunity influence your career trajectory? Yeah, say that slow.
So for me, it was an intentional leadership cohort at my previous institution, which gave us, over the course of 18 months, access to the highest level administrators on campus. And they came and they talked to us about different ways the university operates. They talked about your leadership style, your supervisory style, giving critical feedback. Now, for me, remember, I went from practicing law and I was a litigator, which is a different skill set, to moving into higher education, which is much more less confrontational, let me say it that way, than being an attorney. So I had to learn to change how I approach things, not from, as a lawyer, confrontation is what you do every day, all day. I am perfectly okay with confrontation. I walk on a college campus and they're like, oh, confrontation? We can't have that. We need to be kind. We need to have our subjective listening. We need to do reflective listening and all that. So totally different set of skills. But at the same time, in doing that leadership class really gave me some grounding on how to shift my thought process, because I had come from a different industry, and it helped me to shape what skills I needed to acquire pretty quickly, and then access to the president, the chancellor, those sorts of things. And I always joke, I did student conduct for years. So when you get sued in your professional capacity, the president of the university tends to know who you are. So I took what was not a good situation, but I developed a really good friendship with the president or the chancellor at that time. So again, for me, it was a formal leadership development cohort. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but coming from one career to a totally different career path, that was easy for me to get up to speed.
Thank you.
I must say I've done the same thing. I took a leadership course, and usually these are by invitations only from your boss at Goucher. And that was years ago, and it was more about how to lead effectively. But I am currently enrolled at the Hopkins leadership course as well, which should have ended a year ago, but due to COVID, we're continuing online as usual. And that is also where you look at, they teach you not just leadership styles, how to take care of yourself and your team, resilience, what's best for you, how to read others, your voice, how to really have a voice. Exactly, like in a room where everybody is an extrovert and you're the only introvert, how are you heard there? And so this is really these are good courses to take, but also I did a workshop with my team, and it's HR supported us, and they sent us a coach, and it was a full day workshop where she typed everybody's style, where do you fit on decision making? Are you an introvert, extrovert? How do you approach problems? How do you evaluate things? And it was an eye-opener because the team gelled together. They all of a sudden started understanding each other. Why does one behave differently than another? Why am I not being heard? Why am I monopolizing the conversation? So they got to know that it's good to know each other and to listen. And actually, some of the PDs I would like to take, and I enrolled in one and COVID hit, it's called design thinking. I would like to take courses in design thinking and how to approach things from a systems approach.
And, you know, Chadia, you made me remember that when I went from the position I was in as an associate dean up to becoming an associate vice chancellor, my boss at the time, who was female, said to me, I'm going to provide you with an executive coach for 18 months. So if you are in that situation where you're about to take from your leadership role to a more senior role, please ask for an executive coach. It is absolutely phenomenal to sit with someone whose job it is to let you voice where you are struggling, where you are excelling, how you are viewing things, struggles that you may have with personnel on your team. So I know a lot of people don't use executive coaches, but at the very senior levels, when you're rolling into that position, one of the best things my prior boss could have done was to provide me with an executive coach for the first 18 months.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity. I just want to ask, has anybody, any of our participants ever worked with an executive coach? You can unmute or type yes in the chat. I'm just curious to see if that is something that most people have experienced. I have not. Thank you, Chelsea. I guess from the chat, I guess everybody else has, because Chelsea's the only one who said, am I saying your name right?
Yes, it's Chelsea.
Thank you. I just want to make
I know
sure.
the Y throws people off.
Yes, I'm like, wait a minute, am I saying that right? Okay, so thank you,
Thank you.
Chelsea. I guess has most others experienced or worked with an executive? Oh, okay, leadership coaching. Thank you, Colleen. And for those who have, did you find that, Colleen, did you find that helpful? If you don't mind.
Sure, I'll just unmute for this one. I found it incredibly helpful. I worked with somebody who used the Strengths Finder categories like we've used in the MOLLI Leadership Institute. And it was really very helpful to have them framed as, these are your strengths, lean into them. How can you use these to benefit you and benefit your team? And to have that person who was giving you the constructive criticism that Tamara mentioned earlier was really, really very helpful.
Thank you, Colleen, for sharing. I put you on a spot and I appreciate you willing to do that. So that kind of leads into our last question. What advice or tips do you have for our participants seeking to increase their profile or move into a senior level position in higher ed?
Definitely have an executive coach. They are an experience, honestly, if you get the right one, right? And some may have more experience than others, but usually your organization will provide one if you are in a leadership position. And they do guide you really well, but also make sure you connect with a mentor at your organization. A mentor, it doesn't have to be in the area you are working in, but in the area you like to be promoted in. And make sure these people guide your professional development opportunities by suggesting courses, suggesting PDs, suggesting opportunities for you, because they are in that space and they know who they are hiring in that space. And for you to move up, you need to have all your credentials with you for you to be able to get that job. And having a mentor who can guide you in that space will be great.
I echo everything that Chadia has said. The other piece, and I think it's important, so years ago when I did student conduct as my primary responsibilities, the university said, we don't want you to be jaded because you're only dealing with students that are problematic. So let's give you opportunities to shine in a positive light and work with some of our positive students. So they put me in charge of professional development for the Division of Student Affairs. It was great because whether an opportunity is free, whether it is you reading materials and information, whether you're on listservs, whether you are engaged in communities of practice, all of those things help your professional development. to be able to be in this space and have conversations. So we just had our associate vice provost weekly staff meeting before I got on this call. And my boss was joking with me. She said, well, Tamara, she's been sending us articles all morning about all these different topics. I'm a reader. So when I read something that resonates within the profession, I push that out to my team. I push it out to my AVPs who are co-leading with me. I also push it out to all of my directors who report to me, because I think there's power in knowing what are the emerging trends. What are people saying about higher ed? Not that I only read stuff related to my area of expertise or responsibility, but overall, more globally, what is going on in higher ed at the highest levels? What are institutions grappling with? In higher ed, you know, we have a saying, it hasn't happened to you yet, but it's coming on a day when you least expect it. We all have the same issues. It's just different institutions that we work at. But for the most part, take the time to invest in yourself. Read the books, read the articles, avail yourself of free and paid professional development opportunities. You need to be able to walk in an interview and have a command of the national trends in your area, who are the leading experts in your area, to show that you are not just coming, here's my skill set, but that I am professionally trained. I've availed myself of wonderful opportunities that have come, articles, all of the like. But that, again, I'm owning, that's where I shine, because that's what I like to do. So I'm a reader, and I push reading out to my teams, because it doesn't cost us anything if I send you an article and say, read this article. So don't always think of everything as monetary, because sometimes we do know that financial resources do impact our opportunities sometimes. But I also believe that institutions will invest in you financially if they believe that you're worth the investment.
Thank you. Julie posted a question. If your institution cannot afford an executive coach, are there more affordable alternatives?
Not to an executive coach directly, but really being intentional about surrounding yourself with good mentors. Certainly is not an executive coach, but it helps. It clearly helps. The other thing is, and I say this in all sincerity, be helpful to your supervisor, your boss, who you report to. My team knows, and I say this to them all the time, if you can't make a decision and you can't put out the fire, and I'm the one who always has to do it, I need to know how valuable you are to my team. Be helpful to your supervisor. Be helpful when they request information. Be diligent, get back to them, respond, because that's where you're showing your value. You know, I will ask my team, I did it this morning in an email because of fraternity and sorority life. I said to my 2 associate directors, I need you to weigh in on this request and give me your feedback. That's because I value your opinion. I'm not asking for your feedback because I don't value what you have to say. So that's another way to look at it.
Shadia, do you have anything else to add in terms of if an executive coach is not an option?
I know, I full-heartedly agree. Your other option is to surround yourself with mentors, because executive coaching usually is provided by the institution or the organization, and they do pay for it, and it's very expensive, I believe. So yeah.
So I think we have, thank you so much. And thank the participants for attending. I think we're about at 1:55, and I wanted to know, were there any other questions that some of you may have that was not addressed in any of the questions that we presented today? You can unmute or type your question in the chat. Oh, okay. Chelsea was asking a question, Tamara. She was curious about the advice the VP gave to you.
So in my role previously at that institution, I was the associate dean of students. I dealt with highly confidential information. And she said to me, if you join my team, I need to ensure that you are going to be highly confidential, because at this senior leadership role, we will talk about things that are extremely confidential. And I need to make sure that you understand that you will follow that guidance, and that that's important to you. And I was shocked that she would say that to me, but she wasn't saying it in a negative way. She was vetting what her expectations were as my new boss, in terms of when you get to senior leadership, and I say this in all sincerity, you are privy to information and statistics that are not publicly known. You know what the university might be sending out by way of messaging a week or two in advance of the message. You may have input for that messaging. So when you're at that senior leader level, you need to make sure that you're not seen or viewed as not being a team player, being able to have confidences be maintained within an institution, being appropriate, especially when you have lots of friends that are on campus with you, lots of colleagues and lots of best friends. So I also had a situation where someone who had been one of my confidants that I had a wonderful working relationship with, I was then moving up and I was going to be her boss. And she and I intentionally worked through how the dynamic of our relationship had to change. And this was a personal friend of mine. She'd been to my house, I'd been to her house. I went to her kids' activities. We were friends, but when I got promoted, she was then going to report to me. So she and I had to really have an agreement that I couldn't be as forthright with her about things in the division because of that relationship. That's difficult. But again, that advice from my VP was really, really helpful, because she was letting me know you're at a different level. It's a different level of the rules of engagement. And I'm happy to report that my old boss is now president of a university. So she knew what she was talking about. Very happy for her.
Well, again, thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments? Well, I would like to thank you all for participating, and especially thank our panelists. I'm gonna give a little clap with my Zoom. I'm sure we're all Zoom literate now. So I would like to thank you all so much for attending, and thank Tamara Greenfield-King and Shadia Abras for taking some time, I'm sure from their very busy schedules. Wendy, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you everyone for attending. And if you are interested in the Maryland Online Leadership Institute program, then please, you could email Dionne, myself. I'm the one that sent you all the instructions. We can get you connected with Doug and Larry and Dionne to get you more information. Thank you so much. Great job, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.